It's a funny looking thing, this instrument console, but I guess that's part of the charm of the bike. As it's off the bike, I'll pull it apart and give it a good clean up and check the wiring. The internal metal bracket is secured to the clocks with these 5 thumb nuts and associated washers. I can't remove the bracket yet, as it's also secured by the ignition lock that appears to be seized in place, so I remove the internal wiring. The first subloom connects to the indicator lights and the internal clock lights. The other subloom carries the wires to the row of warning lights. The latter is a bit awkward, but I am able to reach the various connectors with a pair of long-nosed pliers. After an off-camera struggle, I do manage to pop the ignition lock out of the threaded collar that holds it in place. Unfortunately, I managed to damage it whilst doing so. I'll come back to that. With the bracket free from the cluster body, I can remove the 2 bolts. These secure the console to the top yoke and also hold the bracket for the connectors at the front end of the loom. I also unclip the plastic housing for the warning lights. I'll clean the bracket up now and send it off for blasting and powder coat. It takes a bit of careful prying with the screwdriver to pop each of the 3 clocks out of the recess in the console body moulding before leaving them clear. I don't attempt to remove the plastic lenses for the indicator lights, that would just be asking for trouble. I give each of the clocks a clean using some Scotch-Brite pads, but in all fairness they have weathered quite well. Before refitting the clocks, I test the voltmeter using a variable power supply unit, and I have to say it looks pretty good. There are some marks behind the glass on the voltmeter, but removing the glass is beyond my competence level and would no doubt end in tears, so I'll give that a miss. I have already cleaned the housing and used some silicone grease as lubricant to help me refit each of the 3 clocks. There is a tear in the housing here which I will need to fix. With the clocks back in, I refit both the indicator lights and test them. I then go on to test the internal clock lights, although these are a bit dim to be visible under my bench lights. Coming back to the ignition lock, I give the outer casing a good clean with some Scotch-Brite, and then using some araldite glue the outer casing back against the inner barrel in the right position. This being what I damaged when I first tried to remove it from the console. And then, using my multimeter, I'm able to confirm the correct operation. The housing for the warning lights has faded across the front, although going by the fade line it doesn't appear to have been positioned particularly well in the console. I clean it using some isopropyl alcohol and contemplate separating the front face from the body, but decide against it as I'm pretty sure I'll end up damaging it. I do remove each lamp holder, give it a clean, and with a dab of silicone grease reinsert it back into the body. I also clean up the light rust on some of the connectors and then test each of the lamps with my 12 volt supply. The two sublooms that pass into the console are joined with a number of others at a large connector, this being the one that plugs into the middle one of the three connectors at the front of the main loom. The other sublooms are for the hazard light switch, the front brake light switch, the front right indicator, and the front left indicator. Simple, really. We'll come on to all of those in a later video, and for now I concentrate on rewiring the console. The internal clock lights are all fed by this yellow wire, which elsewhere is connected to the feed to the dipped headlight. The green and black wire is for the left indicator and the pink for the right. The black being the ground, which connects to another minor loom to take the ground to each of the clocks and the indicator lights. It looks a mess already, so I spend a few minutes and use some cable ties to try and make it look a little bit neater. To fit the warning light panel I need the bracket, but that's not yet back from powder coat. I can however wire it up, and of the 6 lights, 4 are fed by a feed from the ignition, the other side of those lights then being grounded or not by the relevant switch, the feed coming from this red wire. The other 2, the headlight dipped and high beam, are fed from elsewhere in the loom but grounded directly on the other side, the black being the ground. It's now just a case of working through the remaining wires to identify which light to connect to. My challenge being that not all of the colours align to the bar and diagram, but it's close enough for me to work out. You might also notice that one of the lights is missing. That's because the bulb has failed and I'm awaiting delivery on some new ones. As a final check, I test each of the lights from the connector. I can't test the brake fluid level light as the bulb is blown, but the others are all good. The handlebar switchgear for both sides is stripped and cleaned. The right side incorporates a throttle twist grip and has this crude cruise control on the bottom. Although these look okay, the plastic does not appear to be of a particularly high quality and is in part deformed. There is a small piece of plastic tube which I assume acts as insulation to keep the wiring away from the metal of the bars. On the right switchgear there is the engine run stop switch and the starter button. The left is more complex with the light switch, headlight, dip main switch, indicator switch and the flash and the horn buttons. I apply some silicone grease to all of the moving surfaces, but I do have to say that the mechanical aspects of these switches do leave a lot to be desired. The handlebar switchgear connecting to the main loom via the other two connectors either side of the one for the console. But before I go any further, I do need the internal console bracket back from powder coat so that I can secure the console and reconnect it to the loom. So I'll wrap this video up here. If you like the video, please do give me a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe. Thanks for watching.